Hey, my name is Danny, and this is my 1965 Volkswagen Beetle. We are doing a little bit of a refresh / rebuild of the engine. The goals for this really were to refresh an old engine to increase the displacement from 1200 to 1385. Maybe get a little bit more power as I'm trying to clean it up as well. I started working on cars probably around 2003, and the reason I began learning to work on cars is because I had a second generation Eclipse, which tended to break often, and I was sort of forced into learning how to fix them because it was my only car and I had to make it work. I have been participating in motorsports in Time Attack as a crew member since 2007. I've worked with Wind Speed Motorsports and Douglas Wind on his Dodge Neon SRT4. And over the years, we have done several rebuilds, upgrades. He has really delved deep into the engine building and performance aspect of that car. And some of the things I've learned from him over the years helped me to do something like this. Obviously, there are years of grime. There's a little bit of overspray from a previous paint job. It's just not going to be spotless. We're just going to do the best we can to kind of have it presentable and clean, ready to go. That was disappointingly easy. This particular Beetle really caught my eye because of the mechanical shape it was in. It came in pretty good shape. The body's pretty good. Basically, it was a very good overall package. Between the color and the body and the mechanics, it was a good place to start. Sort of the issues you come across when working with the old Beetles is they've been around for so long, and there are so many people out there that have been working on them for decades. Everyone has an opinion and a method that is correct to them. So what I've had to do myself is just do as much research as I can and pick out certain methods that some people think are right and some people think are wrong, and do the best that I can. That's all I have to say about that. Now, in rebuilding this, I've purchased a lot of new parts, and I have removed, checked out, and cleaned up some previously installed parts, like the oil pump. Took the oil pump off, and just visually seems fine. So I'm putting the same system that was already on the engine back on, which includes this adapter for a full-size oil filter. It's good to have something back on it. All right, now we are going to start assembling the engine. We'll start with the rods, which have new rod bearings and wrist pin bearings. Put the new jugs and pistons in, and then put the heads on. It's kind of one of those cars that I was always interested in growing up. We used to see them around all the time, and one day I saw one that was available for sale, and I kind of realized that I was a grown-up now and I could buy one if I wanted to, so I did. We ended up using it as our getaway car for our wedding too, so the timing worked out really well. I bought this car in time for it to serve as a getaway vehicle at my wedding. We left it, parked off to the side. We went through the reception, and when the time came, we ran over to the car and people followed us, and I let her in and jumped in myself and we drove off. That of course was before, obviously, the engine upgrade, so I was really hoping the entire time that the car would actually go. Purchased 2 sets of pushrod tubes, and both of them have ended up being incorrect lengths. This is the issue that we've had with the pushrod tubes. It's more than can be compressed. I could not even get a nut started with these in place. So that's why we had to leave them off for now and get a spring-loaded type to be able to slip in there a little bit later. All I'm trying to do now is push the pistons out just enough to be able to get the wrist pins in. I'm going to go ahead and install just one side of the wrist pin clips. That way I'm going to capture the pin when I slide it in. This is another one of those methods. There are several to choose from, whether to use a sealant or a small copper gasket or a small paper gasket. So I chose one that was readily available to me, and we're going to see if it'll work. We were wondering about, we were anticipating potentially having to change something with this new exhaust. The oil filter adapter is going to be in the way. So there are several things we're considering doing, either taking the adapter out and putting the regular oil pump in, or mounting a spin-on filter remotely, or even just using the stock exhaust instead of the new one. We're trying to decide when we want to go ahead and mount it in the car. I'm going to put the clutch on next, and from there I think everything else is on the top of the engine and it can be done in place. So we're trying to decide when to mount it. We have to figure out when we need to put the engine tin on, if we can do that in place or if we can do that out of the car. And now we're installing the throwout bearing with the clutch, and then I believe we can go ahead and mate the engine with the transmission. One thing we're doing in this project is upgrading the oil cooler and the tin that has to go with it. And because a lot of the tin is aftermarket and universal, I'm just having to do a little bit of trimming to get it to fit this engine. The most gratifying aspect of working on cars really is to make them work. Maybe make them work again or make them work better, but to be able to take something apart and put it back together and it run is very gratifying. It's very satisfying. It's the original ones that are in the way. So now I'm thinking, do these actually need to be installed
then the 10 goes on them.
So we've just finished up for today. We are going to take some time to make some decisions on what kind of parts to order for the oil filter, and also take a little bit of time to decide the best way to go about installing the rest of the pieces. All we have to do is lift it up and bolt it in. The most frustrating part, of course, is failing. As much as you can learn from it, and as much as you come to appreciate it, it's still frustrating. Probably unlikely to start at first. Okay. Here we go.